James Mennie, brought to you by Gilbert & Daughter. This week, save 50% on their already discounted prices. Gilbert & Daughter, open until Saturday at 49 Donegany in Point Claire.
You're listening to Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette, or maybe not there today. Jim, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you? And happy Labor Day to
yes,
you and
happy
those who
Labor
celebrate.
Day. Yeah. Happy Labor Day to all. Jim, it's National Tofu Day today. Just thought I'd let you know.
Well, I know at least one of us will be celebrating that.
And that would be neither one of us here. Okay, let me start with this story. We talked about this a little earlier on today. So Francois Legault over the weekend, and again, you have to question the release, on a Saturday on social media, talking about what he's going to do to help Quebecers who he knows have been hurt by inflation. And what, again, he's planning to do is apparently to send out a stimulus check.
A stimulus check, but I got to tell you, Francois Legault is going to get away with this. First of all, it was a reaction to his less than stellar performance on, cushioning the blows that inflation and all the other uncertainties, economic uncertainties that are plaguing Quebecers. He was described as being out of touch, disconnected with the Quebec people by Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois. Certainly the PQ and the Liberals are joining in on the chorus, saying essentially this government talks a good game, and it when you get to the end of the line, though, there's nothing there. It's all frosting, no cake, and it's clear that these comments were either perceived as the beginning of a wave or a wavelet of criticism that's going to coincide with the resumption of the fall session next week. And what Francois Legault did on Sunday, he could have called a press conference. He could have, met with reporters today or tomorrow. But what he did, and I don't know if you've seen this, but this guy, Francois Legault, or his social media advisor, have got the game figured out. He posts a message on his Facebook page, and the top of that message is a picture that every boomer has. It's one of those kind of faded Polaroids from around Christmas time, 1965. Here's a picture of a little Francois Legault, I don't know, 8 or 9, he's in his pajamas in front of the Christmas tree with his sisters and his mom, and he's telling this story. It's like a voiceover for the Waltons, Growing up, we didn't have that much, but my mom would budget, and she'd take money, and she'd put it aside, and it'd be an envelope for groceries, and it'd be an envelope for paying the house, and so on and so forth. Orchestrating this entire kind of fuzzy, cozy, very relatable memory for a lot of boomers who are, in fact, the core of Francois Legault's support. And essentially saying we have to apply these, what my mom did, we have to do in Quebec. And, in the meantime, I've been giving people checks. I've been doing the best that we can do. And we're going to get through this together in solidarity and blah, 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 blah. And, I'm doing this to lessen the burden on Quebecers. And I'm doing it. And here's, that's the kicker. I'm doing it because I remember those little envelopes that my mother would put aside. Yeah. Okay? From start, this would never have flown in a press conference. And yet here you go. If you read it, you're going to read it from top to bottom. And essentially what he does is he has a whole shopping list of what he's done and saying, remember all this, blah, 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 blah. But he's framed it in this nice, cozy, fuzzy delivery system. And I got to tell you, he has been doing this more frequently. And I've mentioned this in the past, that when push comes to shove, when it looks as if the criticism may get a little too loud, Francois Legault simply turns off the speaker, goes onto his Facebook page, and he or his entourage create a message not for the reporters from the Gazette or Radio Canada or CJAD. He prepares it for his base, knowing that his base will still go on to Facebook, knowing that his base will still go out and gobble up whatever, and he does have a gift for that. I'm not a fan, but he does have a gift for couching situations in a certain way that it makes you feel you're a part of it. We're all on the same team. I'm doing the best I can. I'm trying to repeat the financial discipline that my mother and my family had to grow up with when we were kids, and that's it. And I thought, this is brilliant. because now you've got the message. He's not going to have to show, as far as I know, for the next 48 hours. He doesn't look like he's out and about. He doesn't have to show. And, of course, these criticisms, and these very justified criticisms from the opposition about the government's economic performance, basically become white noise. They'll be gone by Wednesday. But you know what? That Facebook post is still going to be there.
You know, I realize we're not in an election cycle, Jim, which is why this surprised me at all. What was okay, yes, it's to his base and he's kind of, trying to appeal to them and, that's all well and good. And I guess as you're describing it seems to be working or have worked. What's the point of doing this now?
I think he's realized, first of all, Francois Legault, say what you want about him. He is, length and breadth, he's a politician. And he realizes that that victory in 2018 was luck. And the victory in 2022 was essentially he didn't have much in the way of opposition coming up against him. And quite frankly, that which was pointed at him was very, very anemic and incompetent. But he also realized that luck is a very finite quantity. And the thing is, I think at this point, he's smart enough to know that even though you're quite right, we're not going to have another election for nearly 4 years, he's just turning around and saying, I'm going to campaign. I'm going to campaign constantly. And if you look back on his past few press conferences when he's talking about things that, his government intends to do, there is a very campaign-like tone to the entire narrative. And this is, in the end, and I've applied this metaphor to a lot of other things this government does, it's all about the narrative and keeping control of it. And what I'm recounting to you, what anyone can go and look on his Facebook page, tells you is that he is going to seize whatever genuine or created outrage on the part of the opposition, put that to one side and say, listen, come back with me to 1965 when we all can remember, when we all had to, budget, when we all got financially literate, whether we liked it or not, because we had to. And as far as I'm concerned, it's smart politics. It's brilliant use of social media. And don't be surprised if you see him using this more and more as the months and indeed the years go by, because let's face it, the entire role and weight, and I do not say this with any gaiety in my heart, of mainstream media is becoming more and more questioned with each passing day. There may be a time, and I never thought I'd live to see it, there may be a time that people will listen to the politicians' packaged answer and just run with that and not bother, not swipe left to see what anyone else is saying. And I think we're approaching that point, Aaron.
Well, is that a sad day or what? Okay. I wonder, though, Jim, and we'll move on here, the idea you're going to send out checks every time you do something like this. You're going to get to a point where people will become cynical when they don't get a check.
Well, I mean, let's face it, and we each of these moves that he's made, they're not giant checks. I remember the first one's for $500,
yeah.
And a lot of people were saying, I'm going to give it to charity. This is not going to help my situation with inflation or whatever. There are probably organizations out there that need the money more than I do. But once again, it's the idea that I'm thinking about you. It's a Manon who's always got a little birthday card for you with a little something shoved in between it. And guess what? So far, so good. If the needle was moving on the polls, and if, quite frankly, the opposition was being a little more gutsy in terms of eviscerating this kind of approach, maybe he wouldn't do it. But right now, the road is free and clear for Francois Legault to, yes, take some criticism, but then not even bother, not even, busy himself answering those pesky questions. He can set up his own story on his Facebook page, and that's it. And I'm sorry, that's where we are.
And it seems to be working, as you said. Real quick, Jim, the rudderless provincial Liberal boat seems to be continuing to go around in circles. What's the latest on this? Mark Tanguay saying what?
As my scheduline said, no leader, no program. Well, no problem. Let's just go. We have Mark Tanguay, who's made it clear he has no interest whatsoever in being leader of the Liberal Party, saying that, we're going to go after him. They're an empty box, as I mentioned earlier, all blather and no substance, which is true. But all that said, I'm hearing from Mark Tanguay now, just on the eve of they're having a convention this week prior to the resumption of the session. They don't get it. They just don't get it. They decide to surface at the most predictable and necessary times. But this entire summer, my goodness, we on this show have done more analysis and received more feedback on government gaps or government policy than I've heard from any opposition party. And quite frankly, I mean, with all due respect to the people on this show and the people that I'm happy to work with, that's kind of scary. But that said, this is where we are. And it's almost as if, you know, they're phoning it in. They're saying, okay, well, I'm supposed to say this. And, you know, PQ's obsessed with separation, and Quebec Solidaire doesn't even know how the world works. And it's true they had that big gaffe during the campaign about taxing people because they have more than $1 million worth of assets. I mean, it's all there, but it's all very, very haphazard. They aren't. Maybe they'll figure it out this week, but right now I can't tell you what in the hell the Quebec Liberal Party is about. End of story. And they're the first to admit, well, we're still trying to figure that out, but happily we're having this ongoing process of talking to people in the regions, and that's it. Well, we'll see if that works. But as I say, I'm not betting any big money on the Liberals actually winning the election. I'm not even betting on the Liberals to be the official opposition in the next election if this keeps up. Now, anything can happen. Somebody can come out of the woodwork and say, listen, I'm going to lead this party out of the woods. Maybe it'll happen. But right now, there's absolutely nothing to suggest to me that there's any fuel in the tank for the Quebec Liberal Party. And I don't see anybody, on the horizon, midterm horizon, who looks like they have any gas.
That was my question. Can you imagine? I'm trying to imagine a white knight riding in and obviously, suddenly saving the party, but there is nobody out there.
To steal a line from a headline I wrote about a different political party, the White Knights would come, except they've managed to kill all the horses.
And we'll leave it at that. Jim, thank you. You have a good rest of the day.
You too, Adamat.
James Mennie, the Montreal Gazette.